All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Under the category of What Have You Done For Me Lately, the Milwaukee Bucks are moving on from head coach Mike Budenholzer. In 5 years as the head coach of the Bucks, Budenholzer was 271 and 120 during the regular season while going 39 and 26 in the playoffs. Budenholzer led the Bucks to the playoffs in each of his 5 seasons in Milwaukee, which of course was highlighted by the Bucks winning it all on his watch in 2021. The Bucks have been a perennial championship contender every year under Budenholzer, but you can make the argument that Milwaukee has underachieved a bit in the postseason under him. In 3 of the last 5 years, the Bucks have lost to a lower seeded team in the postseason, which of course was highlighted by Milwaukee losing in 5 games this year to the Miami Heat in the first round of the playoffs, in spite of the fact that the Bucks had the best record in the NBA, losing to the Heat 2 times in the last 4 years in the postseason, especially if you include the playoff bubble back in 2020. In 2019, Milwaukee blew a 2-0 lead in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Toronto Raptors, as Toronto would go on to win the next four. But 2021 was the perfect storm for the Bucks. You know, the Bucks front office basically gave Budenholzer an ultimatum that year, and he did deliver. You know, Milwaukee, led by Giannis, they grew up in that postseason. You know, they went on the road. Uh, Giannis battled Kevin Durant. It was like a one-on-one, mano-a-mano thing in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Semis as the Bucks got past the Brooklyn Nets, and then of course from there they went on to the Eastern Conference Finals. They beat the Atlanta Hawks, and then in the NBA Finals, they found themselves down 0-2 in that series to the Phoenix Suns before rallying to win the next four. And last season, Milwaukee did appear poised to repeat as NBA champions, but a knee injury late in the season to Chris Middleton really hampered their chances of going back to back. And of course, Milwaukee was unable to overcome the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference semis. Now, Middleton was hurt for a portion of this season, but the biggest blow for Milwaukee came in game 1 versus the Heat when Giannis suffered that back injury. Giannis would go on to miss the next 2 games. And you know, the Bucks after 3 games, they were down 2-1 in the series, but they never had control of that series against the Heat, as the Heat dictated things. Most notably, Jimmy Butler dictated things, and he was the best player in that series. And like I talked about it before, Jimmy Butler basically took Milwaukee's lunch money in that series. And then on top of that, you know, like I said, I'm not sure if the Bucks really were all in on facing the Heat. And I'm saying that from the standpoint that it really looked like Milwaukee took this team lightly, and Miami was like, okay, you know what, we're ready to go. And when it was all said and done, the Bucks were being sent home in 5 games. Now, this right here, when you think about this loss to the Heat, the Bucks got cute. Aside from not taking this team serious, they did not play to their strengths against Miami, which is using their size. Milwaukee had a huge size advantage, and instead of capitalizing on that, they focused too much on the perimeter while struggling on the defensive end. Of course, the highlight of that was Jimmy Butler torching the Bucks for 56 points in game 4. To me, Budenholzer's departure falls under the category of simply you cannot fire the players, and the head coach has to pay for the shortcomings of this team. There is plenty of talent on this Bucks team, as these are the prime years of Giannis's NBA career. And do not get me wrong, because winning championships in any sport, it's not easy. And in basketball, it's not easy to get to the NBA finals consistently, like LeBron James did during the prime of his career, and then the Golden State Warriors, have as well. But unfortunately for Budenholzer, this is part of the business of coaching. As the late Bum Phillips, the former head coach of the Houston Oilers, once said, there's two kinds of coaches. Them that's fired and them that's gonna be fired. And Phillips's words still reign true nearly 50 years later. We've now seen three of the last four head coaches to win an NBA championship be fired, with Budenholzer joining Nick Nurse, who was just fired by the Toronto Raptors several weeks ago. And then, of course, if you want to factor in Frank Vogel from a couple of years ago with the Los Angeles Lakers. But to me, obviously, people are going to be critical of the adjustments or the lack of adjustments that Budenholzer made throughout that series against the Miami Heat. And at the end of the day, it's those critical moments that are part of that fine line between getting it done and being unemployed. And right now, Mike Budenholzer is out of work. So, of course, the question is going to be, did the Bucks make the right decision in firing Budenholzer? And honestly, from the outside looking in, I feel like this front office simply said, you know what? We cannot get any further with Mike Budenholzer as our head coach. And of course, this ownership group, this front office in Milwaukee, they've tasted championship glory and they want to go back. And obviously, it is not easy to win a championship. This is why only one trophy is handed out each year to a championship team. But nonetheless, general manager John Horst made this decision in spite of the fact that Budenholzer still had some time on his contract. As Milwaukee is simply looking to go in another direction. Now, of course, the first question is what's next for Budenholzer? He's definitely going to coach again. I mean, you're talking about a guy who basically made the playoffs every year with the Atlanta Hawks, did the same with the Milwaukee Bucks, and of course, he got that championship to get him over that hump. I'm not sure if Budenholzer might coach this year. Maybe he might take a step back and breathe for a year, if you will, and then have his pick of the litter as far as jobs following next season. On the flip side, for the Bucks, you can't get a coach that that you have questions about. You have to get a guy that you're 100% on board with, and on top of that, you've got to get a guy that you feel can get you back to that championship level. This can't be, well, we're trying to wait and see, or a patch and plug type guy. You got to go out there and get that guy, especially when you're moving on from Mike Budenholzer, a guy who has a NBA championship on his resume. Some people are going to talk about Frank Vogel. Maybe he would be right for this job. And I'm just throwing this name out there hypothetically. Some people might talk about Nick Nurse after he just got fired from the Raptors. We have to wait and see. Or maybe the Bucks go for an unnamed. Maybe they promote an assistant. We don't know. This is one of those scenarios where I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised as well. And I think this was a scenario where the Milwaukee front office sat back, thought about this, cooled down after the disappointment of their first round exit from these NBA playoffs, and said, you know what, a change is necessary. Obviously, if the Bucks were still playing, we're not having this conversation. If the Bucks make the Eastern Conference Finals or they get back to the NBA Finals, win or lose, I don't think we're having this conversation. But the fact that Milwaukee did have the best record in the regular season in the NBA, and they did underachieve. You know what? At the end of the day, I can understand why the change was made. Nonetheless, Mike Budenholzer will always go down in Bucks history as leading this team to a championship. Now let's see what's next for him, what's next for Giannis, and what's next for these Milwaukee Bucks. And again, going back to Giannis, the words after the Bucks were eliminated by the Heat. He's saying he didn't consider this season a failure, and you know what? That's his opinion. But nonetheless, once you get to that point where you've tasted championship gold, there's no other direction to go. Everything else is a step back. So you want to try to get it again. Again, it's not easy to achieve, but nonetheless, Mike Budenholzer unfortunately had to pay for the shortcomings of the Bucks early postseason exit. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I'm signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.